Stay with me. You're gonna be okay.
She was working the night shift when a billionaire's car crashed on a dark highway outside Atlanta. He was rushed into the emergency room, barely alive, and she was the nurse who fought to save him. She didn't know his name or his wealth. She just knew he needed her. 6 months later, just when everything in her life seemed to finally fall into place, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. When she read those words, her entire world stopped. The truth hiding beneath that crash was darker than she ever imagined, and the person responsible was closer than she thought. If you want to know what that message said, who sent it, what truth she discovered, and whether love survived or crumbled under the weight of betrayal, you have to stay with me until the very last second of this story. But before we dive in, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss stories like this. Drop a comment down below and tell me where you're watching from. I love connecting with all of you. Smash that like button and share this video with anyone who loves powerful drama. Now let's get into it. Mercy General Hospital. That fateful night, the ambulance siren screamed to the cold Atlanta night as Sophia Martinez stood in the emergency room, her scrubs already stained from the last trauma case. She had been a nurse at Mercy General Hospital for 8 years, and she had seen enough broken bodies and shattered lives to fill 1,000 nightmares. But tonight felt different. The paramedics burst through the automatic doors, wheeling in a man whose expensive suit was torn and soaked with blood. His face was pale, his breathing shallow, and his eyes, those striking gray-blue eyes, flickered open for just a moment before closing again. Male, mid-30s, major car accident on Highway 85. The paramedics shouted over the chaos. Multiple injuries, possible internal bleeding. Vitals are dropping fast. Sophia's training kicked in immediately as she moved to his side, her hands already checking his pulse while barking orders to the trauma team around her. Jackson Pierce was Atlanta's most successful tech billionaire at 37 years old, though Sophia didn't know that as she worked frantically to stabilize him. She didn't know about his empire, his billions, or the tragedy that shaped him into the cold, driven man everyone feared in boardrooms across the country. All she knew was that this man was dying on her table, and she refused to let that happen. His heart had already stopped once during transport, and now it was her job to bring him back again. "Stay with me," she whispered as she worked, her voice cutting through the medical chaos around them. She could feel his life slipping away with every passing second. But something inside her refused to give up. Maybe it was her training, maybe it was her stubborn nature, or maybe it was something deeper she couldn't yet name. Hours later, when the crisis had finally passed and Jackson was stable in the ICU, Sophia stood outside his room, watching him sleep through the glass window. Dr. Patterson, the attending physician, came up beside her with a tired smile. "You saved his life tonight, Sophia. That man should be dead right now, but your quick thinking and skill brought him back." Sophia nodded, feeling the weight of exhaustion settling into her bones. She thought about her own life. Her mother, Rosa, who was struggling with mounting medical bills back home. Her younger brother, Miguel, who was in his final year at Emory Law School and counting on her support. This was supposed to be her last week at Mercy General before starting a higher-paying position with an elite private nursing agency. She needed that money desperately, but something made her glance back at the sleeping billionaire one more time before walking away. When Jackson woke up 2 days later, the first face he saw was Sophia's. She was checking his vitals, her movements gentle but efficient, and when their eyes met, something passed between them that neither could explain. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice hoarse from the breathing tube that had recently been removed. "Mercy General Hospital in Atlanta," Sophia replied softly, offering him water. "You were in a serious car accident 3 nights ago. You're lucky to be alive, Mr. Pierce." Jackson studied her face. The warm brown eyes, the kind smile, the way she touched his arm with genuine care rather than the cold professionalism he was used to from everyone in his life. "Thank you," he said simply, but the weight behind those 2 words carried everything he couldn't yet say. For the first time in 4 years, since Caroline's death, Jackson felt something stir in his chest that wasn't grief or rage. Jackson's recovery was complicated by severe injuries, broken ribs, a shattered leg, and a concussion that left him struggling with headaches and memory issues. His assistant arranged for private nursing care at his penthouse in Buckhead, and when Jackson requested Sophia specifically, The agency agreed immediately after seeing the generous compensation he offered. Sophia walked into his luxury penthouse a week later and felt like she had stepped into another universe. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Atlanta skyline. Modern art decorated every wall, and the space was so perfectly designed it felt more like a museum than a home. But despite all the wealth surrounding him, Jackson seemed utterly alone. No family visited, no friends stopped by, just business associates who talked about quarterly reports and market shares while their boss recovered from nearly dying. Sophia recognized that loneliness immediately because she had felt it herself after her father died when she was 16. The first few weeks were difficult as Sophia learned that Jackson was a terrible patient. He refused to rest, constantly worked from his laptop despite doctor's orders, and pushed himself beyond what his broken body could handle. "You need to stop working and let yourself heal," Sophia told him firmly one afternoon after finding him on yet another conference call despite having a fever. "My company needs me," Jackson shot back, his gray eyes flashing with frustration. "Your company needs you alive and functional, not dead from pushing yourself too hard," Sophia countered, unplugging his laptop without permission. They stared at each other in tense silence before Jackson did something that surprised them both. He laughed. It was rusty and rough, like he hadn't used those muscles in years, but it was genuine. "You're not afraid of me," he observed with something like wonder in his voice. "Should I be?" Sophia asked, raising an eyebrow. As days turned into weeks, their relationship deepened beyond the professional boundaries Sophia had carefully maintained with every other patient. Jackson told her about Caroline, his fiancée who had died 4 years ago during what should have been a routine surgery. The surgeon had been negligent, and by the time anyone realized a mistake, Caroline was gone. "I built my entire company after that," Jackson admitted one evening as they sat watching the sunset paint the Atlanta skyline in shades of orange and gold. "I wanted to create medical technology that could prevent what happened to her. I thought if I could save other people, maybe her death would mean something." Sophia reached over and took his hand, understanding his pain in a way few people could. "You don't have to carry that guilt alone anymore," she said quietly. "Caroline's death wasn't your fault, and you've already honored her memory through the lives your technology has saved." Everything changed the day Sophia's mother collapsed at work. Rosa Martinez had been pushing herself too hard, working double shifts as a housekeeper to help pay Miguel's law school tuition, and her body finally gave out. The diagnosis came back devastating. Stage 3 pancreatic cancer that had already spread to her lymph nodes. Sophia sat in the hospital waiting room with Miguel, both of them crying as the oncologist explained that traditional treatment would only extend Rosa's life by months, not years. But there was an experimental treatment program at Duke University Medical Center in North Carolina that showed promising results. The problem was the cost, $400,000 that their family could never afford. Sophia's world crumbled as she realized she might lose her mother, the woman who had sacrificed everything to raise her children alone after their father died. She couldn't breathe thinking about a world without Rosa's warmth and strength. Jackson found Sophia crying in his guest room that night, her phone clutched in her hand as she tried to figure out how to tell her mother there was no way they could afford a treatment that might save her life. "What's wrong?" he asked from the doorway, his voice gentle with concern. Sophia looked up, tears streaming down her face, and the whole story poured out. Her mother's cancer, the experimental treatment, the impossible cost, her complete helplessness in the face of losing the person she loved most in the world. Jackson listened without interrupting, and when she finished, he simply said, "I'll pay for it." Sophia's eyes went wide with shock. "Jackson, no, you can't. That's $400,000. I can't accept that from you." But Jackson moved closer, sitting beside her on the bed. "Sophia, you saved my life. Let me help save your mother's. Please." The next morning, Jackson had already arranged everything. Contacted Duke Medical Center, spoken with the oncologist, set up the treatment plan, and transferred the funds before Sophia could even process what was happening. But as she stood in his study thanking him through tears of overwhelming gratitude, his business partner Derek Chandler arrived unannounced. Derek was a silver-haired man in his 50s with cold blue eyes and a smile that never quite reached them. "Jackson, we need to discuss the quarterly reports." Derek said, his gaze sliding over Sophia with barely concealed contempt. "And perhaps your nurse could give us some privacy for business matters." Something in Derek's tone made Sophia's instincts flare with warning. She had dealt with enough entitled, wealthy people to recognize when someone viewed her as beneath them. But what she didn't know was that Derek had been embezzling from Jackson's company for over a year, and her presence was becoming a problem for his carefully laid plans. 2 months later, love and danger collide. Sophia watched Derek leave Jackson's penthouse that afternoon with a strange feeling settling in her stomach that she couldn't shake off. Over the next few weeks, she noticed things that troubled her. Derek showing up unannounced at odd hours, always pushing Jackson to make quick decisions about major company moves, constantly questioning Jackson's judgment about everything from business deals to his recovery timeline. But what troubled Sophia most was how Derek looked at her when he thought no one was watching, like she was an obstacle he needed to remove. Meanwhile, Jackson's feelings for Sophia had grown into something he could no longer deny or hide. Every morning when she walked into his room with that beautiful smile, every evening when they talked for hours about everything and nothing, every moment of her gentle care and fierce protection of his health made him fall deeper. He hadn't felt this alive since before Caroline died, and it terrified him as much as it thrilled him. Rosa's treatment at Duke was showing remarkable results that gave the entire Martinez family hope they hadn't dared feel in months. The experimental protocol was working better than anyone expected, and the tumors were shrinking at an encouraging rate. Sophia made the 3-hour drive in North Carolina every weekend to be with her mother, and Jackson started joining her, claiming he needed to check on his investment, but really just wanted to support the woman he loved and meet the family who meant everything to her. Rosa took one look at the way Jackson gazed at her daughter and pulled Sophia aside during one visit. "That man loves you, Mija," Rosa said with a knowing smile of a mother who sees everything. "And unless I'm very wrong, you love him too. Don't let fear keep you from happiness. Life's too short and too precious to waste." Sophia couldn't deny it anymore. She was completely in love with Jackson Pierce. The night Jackson proposed was nothing like the grand gestures wealthy men were known for. It was a quiet Tuesday evening in his penthouse, and they were cooking dinner together, something that had become their favorite ritual. Sophia was chopping vegetables while Jackson attempted to make his grandmother's pasta sauce recipe, and they were laughing about his terrible cooking skills when he suddenly went quiet. Sophia looked up to find him watching her with such intensity it made her breath catch. "Marry me," he said simply, no preamble, no elaborate setup. "I know it's fast. I know people will say things. I know it's complicated, but I don't care. I love you, Sophia. You brought me back to life in every way possible, and I want to spend whatever time I have left on this earth making you as happy as you've made me." He pulled out a velvet box containing a stunning sapphire ring surrounded by diamonds. Sophia's hands flew to her mouth as tears spilled down her cheeks. "Yes," Sophia whispered through her tears, launching herself into Jackson's arms with enough force to make him stumble backward, laughing. "Yes, I'll marry you. I love you so much it scares me sometimes." They held each other in his kitchen, both crying and laughing, the pasta sauce burning on the stove completely forgotten. When Jackson slipped the ring onto her finger, Sophia felt like her life had transformed into something she'd never dared dream of, from struggling to survive to being engaged to a man who loved her with his whole heart. But their joy was short-lived. The next morning, Derek showed up again, this time with Robert and Catherine Bennett, Caroline's parents, who Sophia was meeting for the first time. The three of them looked at Sophia's engagement ring with expressions that ranged from disapproval to outright hostility. "We need to talk about this inappropriate relationship," Catherine said coldly, her voice dripping with disdain. "Our daughter has barely been gone 4 years, and you're replacing her with your nurse?" The confrontation that followed was ugly and painful, with the Bennetts questioning everything about Sophia, her background, her motives, whether she was exploiting Jackson's vulnerable state for money. Jackson defended Sophia fiercely, his voice cold with anger as he told Caroline's parents that his personal life was none of their business, and they needed to leave his home immediately. But after they left, Sophia saw something in Derek's eyes that chilled her to the bone. Satisfaction, like this confrontation had been exactly what he wanted. Over the next few weeks, strange things started happening. Journalists somehow got hold of details about their engagement and published articles questioning whether Jackson's judgment was impaired from his head injury. Business competitors suddenly knew confidential information about Jackson's company plans. Board members started expressing concerns about his leadership. Someone was orchestrating a campaign to undermine Jackson, and Sophia's instincts told her Derek was behind it, though she had no proof yet. Miguel, who had started working in Jackson's legal department after graduating from Emory, was the one who finally uncovered the truth. He'd been reviewing company financial records as part of a routine audit when he noticed irregularities that didn't add up. Payments to vendors that didn't exist, budget allocations that disappeared into offshore accounts, project costs that were inflated beyond reason. Miguel worked late into the night for 3 weeks, following the money trail with the determination of someone protecting family, and what he discovered was devastating. Derek Chandler had been systematically stealing from Jackson's company for nearly 2 years, embezzling over $8 million through a complex network of shell companies and falsified records. But it went even deeper than theft. Miguel found email communications between Derek and the Bennetts that revealed they'd been working together, planning to have Jackson declared mentally incompetent so they could take control of his company and fortune through conservatorship, just like they'd tried with other family members in the past. Jackson sat in his study staring at the evidence Miguel had compiled, his face pale with shock and betrayal. Derek had been his partner for 5 years, someone he'd trusted completely. And now he was learning that trust had been a lie from the beginning. "There's more," Miguel said quietly, pulling up another file. "I found maintenance records for your car from the night of the accident. Your brake lines were professionally cut. This wasn't just embezzlement. Jackson, Derek tried to kill you." The words hung in the air like poison. Someone Jackson had worked beside, shared meals with, trusted with his company's future, had actually tried to murder him. Sophia's hands trembled as she reached for Jackson's, both of them processing the horrifying truth that the accident that brought them together had been attempted murder. "We need to go to the police," Sophia said firmly, her voice steady despite her fear. "We have the evidence. We can prove what he did, and we can make sure he never hurts anyone again." But Jackson had a different plan. "We're still getting married on Saturday as scheduled," he announced, his gray eyes hard with determination. "Derek and the Bennetts think they're winning because they've been spreading doubt about my judgment and our relationship. Let them think they've succeeded. Let them come to our wedding believing they're about to watch me make the biggest mistake of my life. And then we'll show them exactly how wrong they are." The days leading up to the wedding were tense as they coordinated with police and Jackson's security team to plan the arrests. Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that something else was coming, something they hadn't anticipated yet. Her instincts were proven right on the morning of her wedding day when an anonymous text message arrived on her phone, containing police reports, mechanical analysis, and photographs that confirmed everything Miguel had discovered, plus one additional detail that made Sophia's blood run cold. The message revealed that the Bennetts had known about Derek's plan to kill Jackson before it happened and had actively helped him, providing information about Jackson's schedule and routines. The Swan House Gardens had never looked more beautiful than on that perfect spring afternoon, with white roses covering every surface and 200 guests gathered to witness what they thought would be a simple love story. Derek sat in the third row with the Bennetts, all 3 of them wearing smug smiles that made Sophia's stomach turn as she walked down the aisle on Rose's arm. But when she reached Jackson and saw the love and determination in his eyes, her fear melted away. They exchanged vows that promised partnership through whatever storms came, kissed as husband and wife to thunderous applause. And then Jackson did something that shocked everyone present. He stood up during the reception, called for attention, and with calm authority that silenced the room, he laid out every piece of evidence against Derek and the Bennetts. Police officers who'd been positioned throughout the venue moved forward as Derek tried to run, and the Bennetts protested their innocence. The arrest happened right there at the wedding reception, with handcuffs clicking into place as guests gasped and whispered in shock. 5 months later, Sophia discovered she was pregnant during a routine checkup that turned into the most shocking news of their lives. She was carrying twins. Jackson nearly fainted when the doctor showed them the ultrasound revealing 2 tiny heartbeats flickering on the screen. Derek was in federal prison facing decades behind bars for attempted murder, embezzlement, and conspiracy. The Bennetts had taken plea deals that still resulted in significant prison time for their roles in the murder plot and corporate conspiracy. Rosa was cancer-free and already crying tears of joy about becoming a grandmother to twins. Miguel had been promoted to head of Jackson's legal department after his brilliant investigative work saved the company. Jackson had restructured his entire business around affordable medical technology, creating a foundation in Caroline's name that would help families who couldn't afford life-saving treatments. And every evening, Sophia and Jackson would sit together on their balcony overlooking the Atlanta skyline, his hand resting gently on her barely visible baby bump, both of them marveling at how a night that should have ended in death had instead led to more life and love than either had ever imagined possible. They had survived betrayal, fought for justice, and built something beautiful from the ashes of tragedy. Their forever was just beginning, and the best chapters were still ahead. 2 months before her due date, Sophia's pregnancy took a dangerous turn when she collapsed at their foundation clinic while reviewing patient files. Jackson rushed her to Mercy General Hospital, where doctors discovered severe preeclampsia that was threatening both her life and the twins. Her blood pressure skyrocketed to deadly levels, and within hours, doctors made the terrifying decision that they needed to perform an emergency C-section immediately or risk losing all 3 of them. Jackson stood in the surgical waiting room with Rosa and Miguel, his hands shaking as he remembered another hospital, another woman he loved, another surgery that had stolen everything from him. "Not again," he whispered desperately, tears streaming down his face. "Please, God, not again." The surgery lasted 4 agonizing hours, while Sophia's body fought against complications trying to kill her. Her heart stopped twice on the operating table, and each time the medical team fought to bring her back, shocking her heart into beating again, while simultaneously delivering 2 premature babies who came into the world fighting for every breath. When the surgeon finally emerged, exhausted but smiling, Jackson nearly collapsed with relief. "Your wife is a warrior," the doctor said with genuine admiration. "She survived what should have been fatal, and your son and daughter are small but strong, breathing on their own in the NICU." Jackson was allowed into recovery, where Sophia lay pale and weak but alive, her eyes fluttering open when she heard his voice. "The babies," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Perfect," Jackson said through his tears, kissing her forehead with trembling lips. Just like their mother, they named their twins Emma Caroline Pierce and James Miguel Pierce, honoring the people whose lives had shaped their journey. Caroline, whose tragic death had led Jackson to create technology that now saved thousands of lives, and Miguel, whose courage and brilliance had exposed a conspiracy that nearly destroyed them. 6 months later, as Sophia sat in their nursery holding both babies while Jackson watched from the doorway with a love so fierce it still took her breath away, she thought about the night that had changed everything. The crash, the emergency room, the moment she fought to save a stranger's life, never knowing he would become her entire world. They had survived attempted murder, corporate betrayal, family conspiracy, and life-threatening medical complications. They had built a love that conquered fear, a family that rose from tragedy, and a future that honored the past while embracing hope. And as Emma grabbed her finger while James slept peacefully in her arms, Sophia knew with absolute certainty that every struggle, every tear, every moment of fear had been worth it to arrive at this perfect moment of peace, love, and the kind of happiness that comes only after surviving the storm together.